Good afternoon and welcome back. This is US Home Talk. We are live every Wednesday at noon and on demand at ushometalk.com or wherever you guys find your podcasts. We are your hosts, Marcus Walgrave with the South Dakota Home Team powered by Hague Realtors, Jason Walgrave with the Walgrave Real Estate Group at REMAX Advantage Plus, and Mike Overson with Luminate Bank. We'll be taking all of your questions today during today's show. Anything and everything real estate. Our call-in number is 612-234-7585. Again, 612-234-7585. Or you can leave us a message in the comments section on Facebook. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Oh, I mean, could we be doing any better with mustaches this sweet?
No.
They kind of look fake. They look so good. They don't even look real.
I
They look that
I was
good.
noticing the intro music is definitely feels like mustache music. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. The guitar riff, that's definitely like Starsky and Hutch type-ish music, you know what I mean?
Chips.
Or even
Chips.
Shaft. You know?
I love it. Love it. Jason looks
Well,
like he
we are
grooms
gonna-
his mustache. Do you groom it? Do you
Nope.
comb it? No
All
combing?
natural.
Oh. No, just for men?
All
You don't
natural,
just for
no
men?
dyes.
No dyes.
It just comes in that black, huh?
I mean, Evan pointed that out last week that it is darker than my hair a little bit, but
It's just it's just natural. It's just natural masculinity right there, you know?
Yeah.
my son Theodore says I look like Mario from Mario Brothers.
Mario, that's, my girls have made the same comment when I rocked. Last time I rocked a mustache, they thought I looked like Super Mario Brother. So, which is a compliment. I think that's a
Just,
you know
yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
no
Mario
no,
Kart.
no. I mean, I don't think I would take Mario in like Super Mario Kart, but you know, in the game, yeah, definitely pick Mario over Luigi. No big deal. Hey, we are going to have a great show here today, guys. We are going to be talking about an article that I came across on Realtor.com. A very interesting article. The title of it was A Bidding War with Yourself, how making multiple offers on the same house has become a winning strategy. Julie Taylor put this out on June 5th. And so I found it interesting. It's kind of the opening sentence in it was, or the opening paragraph was, hey, there are some bidding wars going on. And I think that's something where if you're listening to like some national news, right, you're going to hear that. You're going to hear that, hey, inventory is on the rise. And so if you're a buyer out there and you hear these national news titles and you say, okay, inventory is on the rise, there's lots of inventory, maybe most inventory since 2018 in some cases. I can't emphasize enough that's not across the board. It's kind of like an on average. I know you guys up in the Twin Cities are experiencing something similar that we'd have here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota's market. Our inventory is low. Yes, we are getting new listings, and our new listings are more this year than they were last year. However, we continue to see a very large demand from our buyers, and those buyers are buying the homes, keeping inventory down. So this isn't, across the board. So I think, for our specific markets, bidding wars is definitely a more common topic. And it's not just specific to a specific price range. It can be all the way from starter homes to, executive lake homes. And so, just make sure, I can't emphasize enough, just make sure that whatever market you're in, that you're relying on the experts in that market, because they're going to be able to give you that information saying, hey, this is the buyer's market and in our market. Still in the Sioux Empire, the Sioux Falls, South Dakota market, and Jason and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Twin Cities, you could definitely argue that as a whole, it maybe is still falling in that seller's market territory.
Yeah, I think it's. Inventory is still down overall when you compare it to what a healthier, balanced market would be. We definitely have more listings than we did last time this year. We're seeing. I definitely feel like in the last maybe month, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. I feel that it's less of a seller's market than it was in April and May. And so we're seeing, a fair amount of price reductions. We're seeing less multiple offers. But, most of the time, if you've got a really nice property, it doesn't need, really any repairs or anything like that, and it's in a good neighborhood and it's priced correctly, that home with the proper marketing campaign and advertising campaign from a top agent or team, that home should sell in under 2 weeks. And so the market's different than it was a year ago, different than it was even a couple months ago, but overall inventory is still down, and we are seeing multiple offers. And so, Marcus, your topic today is interesting because it's multiple offers from one buyer, right? And it's like, what does that mean? And so you and I had a chance to talk about it a little bit on Monday on some of the things that we've experienced, but would love to hear more about what that article says.
Yeah, definitely. And just to kind of, give you guys a quick, obviously, Jason, you've been in real estate for many years, and so have I, and so's Mike. And so, but if we just share some stats here, this is something that I got from Minnesota Realtor, the May Housing Market Report. They just sent that out, I think, yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And this is the May year-over-year summary of key market indicators for Minnesota. Closed sales is down just slightly, 0.4. New listings is up 5.3%. And, homes for sale is up, 10.1%. And so that's kind of the May year-over-year summary of key market indicators for Minnesota. And then you kind of jump into what we have here in the Sioux Empire and the monthly indicators for that. When we kind of look at here, our numbers, our new listings, year to date is up 8.3%. But our inventory is when comparing in the month of May of 25 to the month of May and 24 is actually down 16%. And One of the big reasons for that is that we have closed more sales this year. And as of right now, year to date from 25 to 24, pending sales, so ones that are going to be closing here in the near future, our pending sales are up 36.1%.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yes. So,
Dang,
I mean, there
That's a
is
big
just,
number. No wonder
it's
you've
a
been so
really
darn
big
busy.
number. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's been super, super busy here in the Sioux Empire. Again, like the reason I'm just sharing these stats is because, yes, we have our opinions because we live and breathe real estate, 7 days a week, and we know what's going on. But sometimes it's nice just to kind of see what the stats say as well, and
Yes.
kind of compare that to what we're experiencing. But and so today's topic, I think, again, if you're in the Twin Cities or the Sioux Empire, or a similar market, if your real estate professional has kind of shared with you like, hey, we're still kind of in the seller's market, this might be a very relevant topic to you guys. And it just kind of comes out to where there's a practice out there that's starting to gain steam, and Jason will kind of elaborate on what we've done personally to represent our clients in this, but this idea of a bidding war with yourself. There are buyers out there that are submitting multiple offers on the same house, and it's becoming a winning strategy for them. And the idea is that, okay, well, if you may have a buyer and the buyer says, hey, I like this property, but I have different ideas on how we could put an offer towards this property and hopefully appeal to be most appealing to seller, and just kind of like coming out of the gates and saying, hey, here's all our cards. We're kind of going to show it to you right away. And the example is maybe an individual who might be who has the ability to be a cash buyer and submitting an offer based on a cash offer, and then a second offer that might need a mortgage. So saying, hey, the property might, for the example given here, let's say the property was listed for 1.5 and million, and the buyer says, hey, we can buy this house with cash, but we're going to offer you 1.3 million as a cash offer. But if you're not interested in taking that type of price reduction on the agreed upon purchase price, then in that case, we're going to have to finance, because 1.3 is where we can do it with cash. If we can't do it at 1.3, we're going to finance, and then our finance offer is going to be a $1.5 million offer. So that was kind of the example that it was given, was that one buyer was in a position to pay cash, is offering significantly less with a cash offer than if he'd have to pay with a finance offer, and presenting that right out of the gates, giving multiple offers to the same property coming out of the gates, and so that was kind of the example that was given. And as you said, Jason, we kind of talked about this, right? We kind of talked about, doing something similar to that, in a sense, kind of presenting multiple offers with it. And what we've kind of have done representing our clients, not necessarily out of the gates, right? It wasn't necessarily the case. It was kind of more presenting what we felt was the best offer that represents our buyer client. And then from there, adjusting to how maybe the seller responds to that offer.
Yeah. I think, it's interesting. It got me, the more I was thinking about it, I thought, man, this could be a good strategy, especially utilizing Mike Overson and Illuminate Bank's Fly Home program, right? And so, an idea or an example would be, you got a $500,000 house. You're going to go in with you've got one offer that's contingent on the buyer selling their house, and maybe that offer is $500,000. Maybe it's a property hasn't been on the market long, you want it, so that offer's $500,000. Well, maybe and then an additional offer would be okay, or we can go non-contingent with Mike Overson at Illuminate Bank through the Fly Home program. There's a cost to that program, so we're gonna calculate the cost of the program. We're gonna calculate even worst case scenario, 6 months worth of holding costs, and you figure out what that number is. Let's call it $20,000, and so then you come in with a non-contingent 480 offer, and so you're right out of the gate you're saying, here's our two offers, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you get a pick. And so Marcus and I have used this strategy in the past, but not on the initial offer. So I'll make an offer, sellers will come back with a counter, then I'll sit down with my buyers and I'll say, okay, let's give them 2 or 3 different options. Here's our counter. You get to pick. Option 1 is this. Option 2 is this. Option 3 is this. But I actually like the idea of coming out of the gate with having 2 offers, especially or specifically using Illuminate Bank's Fly Home program, because then it's like, hey, if you want to take the higher price, seller, it's the contingent offer. If you want the non-contingent offer, there's a cost to that. So, and we'll absorb that, but the offer isn't going to be as much. I think that could work well. I think it could work really well.
Yeah, and I think the reason why that helps too is just it keeps the 2 offers separate versus writing an offer and then having an addendum to say, if seller doesn't want to accept contingent offer, then buyer will change to non-contingent at this price, right, and blah, right? It's literally like, here's offer number 1, read it, yep, right, study it. Here's offer number 2 versus like, well, offer number 1, but if we don't like that, then there's wording down here that actually kind of changes that offer, and it probably keeps it cleaner and more easy for that seller to see the differences between the 2.
I think you're right, Mike. That's a lot of times listing agents and sellers won't accept offers with an escalation clause, and I think part of that is because it gets, it's not crystal clear what the offer is. It's $2,000 higher than the highest offer or whatever. And I would say 1 in 4, 25% of sellers just say, I won't look at an offer with an escalation clause. Give me your best offer. And so the idea of presenting two offers up front. And I think you can use this even if you are in multiple offers, right? I mean, let's say there's two or three other offers on the table already. Well, submit your two offers or submit your three offers. I mean, I think you can use the strategy even if you're not the only buyer on the table.
So it's interesting. I mean, when I first saw the article, I mean, Jason, you can contest to this. I mean, I was like, this is a horrible idea. Like, why would anybody ever do this? This is dumb. Poor representing your client. And my mindset was the example that was given in the first paragraph, the difference between 1.5 mortgage and a 1.3 cash. I mean, if I were a seller, right, and I saw a buyer saying, hey, I'll pay you 1.3 cash, but I need to finance 1.5. Well, what risk is there to work with a buyer who can come up with 1.3 cash,
Right.
1.3 million cash, and if they just need to finance another, obviously they're financially sound if they can pay $1.3 million cash. So I was like,
Right.
why would, if I was a seller, I'd say, keep your cash, finance it all you want. I mean, you're rock solid. I know you have 1.3 cash liquid right now that could buy my property. So if you want to, hang on to some and invest it, whatever you need to do and finance it, no big deal. I'm not going to eat 200 grand,
Right.
because of this difference between cash. But then, so that's how my mindset was going, was the example. But then, having the conversation with Jason and breaking it down, because real estate is so specific to the individual and the property, right? To the example that you gave, Jason, with what Luminate Bank offers, and that idea of like, hey, here is a contingent home offer and a non-contingent home offer. Then that makes total sense.
Right.
To come out of the gates with it. To your point exactly, Mike, whether it's an addendum or simply just not wanting to have to go back and forth with negotiations. I know, when I represent buyers, I don't have one buyer that I represent. And sellers may not be just sitting by the phone waiting for their realtor to call them with offers and negotiation. Submitting an offer and saying, hey, seller, you got 12 hours to respond or 24 hours to respond. That's normal, right? So instead of like waiting for a counter offer to react, then that's I think to what you were getting at, Mike, is just saying, hey, here's this offer, here's this offer. Response time is 12 hours, and you kind of know where we're coming from without having to maybe lose time and allow other buyers to come into the equation to where then it's multiple offers with multiple buyers, right? And instead of just multiple offers with one person, one buyer, that could be a really a smart tactic to expedite the negotiation process, to push it down, down the path quicker to coming to terms.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we'll see more of this too. Because have you yourselves fielded two different offers or three different offers from one buyer in any of your listings?
No.
You guys have not personally seen this yet.
Yeah, not out of the gates, right? I mean, I think to like Jason's, a really maybe a savvy buyer's realtor who's very experienced, they may come back with that idea of like, hey, what we're willing to do is on our counter, this is kind of what we're thinking. We can accept your 90-day closing. We didn't really want to wait 90 days because our lease agreement ends in 30, but we can if the seller wants 90 days, we can do 90 days, but it's going to be at this price. But if we can close in 30 days, we're willing to pay $5,000 more. Like that, again, like that not out of the gates, but like once you have like a response from seller, that's what I've done, and that's what I've seen as well, but not, I haven't received multiple offers from the same realtor representing the same buyer before. But yeah, I mean, it could be a good tactic, especially in the low inventory bidding war price range inventory out there. It might be one of those situations where you can just save a day of negotiating and kind of beat everybody to the punch, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, another thing I was gonna.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Mike.
No, I was gonna go ahead, Marcus.
I was going to comment about it. It was interesting to hear you guys comment about the escalation clause. During from 2020 to 2023, that was definitely the situation that we saw. We didn't even really have in our market escalation clauses prior to 2020 were very, very uncommon. And so, but then it became very common, but then it didn't take long for sellers to be like, no, it kind of to that first example, right? If you're willing to pay 1.5 with a mortgage, you're kind of showing me your cards. If your escalation says, hey, I'll beat the next offer by $200 up to 10 grand over list price, a seller's going to come back and say, oh, I don't really care about your plus $200, but I am interested in that max amount that you wrote on that paper that you're willing to pay me. So let's just go with that number. Let's get rid of the escalation clause, and you just go ahead and put that number on the purchase price, and we'll accept that deal. It didn't take long for sellers, who are working with good realtors that to quickly sidestep that escalation then to where then it really wasn't. It may help the buyer get the deal, but not many buyers were winning and just having to outbeat the second offer by the $500, the $1,000 amount, whatever it was. It was just kind of like, you showed us your max dollar, let's go with that.
Yep.
Yeah. Here's the reason as a listing agent that I would not like escalation clauses. And I learned this trick from a very experienced real estate agent who represents buyers and sellers. He's like, when I make an escalation clause offer, I don't put a maximum on there. I'll just say we're going to go 1,000 or 2,000 over the next highest deal. Just leave it open-ended. Okay. At that point, if they come back and say, okay, the next highest offer was 550,000, you're going to pay $2,000 more. So that the price to you is 552 then, right? He goes back to his buyer and says, sellers accepted your offer, right? But it's not a valid offer unless you sign it. Do you want to pay 552 for this thing? If they come back and say, no, that's too high, we don't want to pay for that. Then they just don't sign the offer. Right? And so now you've kind of went back and forth and you kind of burned some time, and maybe you told the other buyers, it's like, hey, sorry, they're accepting another offer. Then all of a sudden you come back 2 days later and be like, oh, it's back on the market. You know what I mean? And then you run into that thing. And so, that's the reason on the listing side of things, I don't like escalation clauses, is because a smart buyer's agent can play that game of like, leave it open-ended, but buyer, you don't have to sign it if you don't want to, if you don't like the number that it ends up being at.
Right.
We saw that kind of at the later, maybe in like, later part of 2022, we started seeing some of that, but was not received very kindly to really anybody, right? I mean, great tactic for buyer if it works. But a lot of sellers, I was representing, if we ever got offers like that, they were pretty much just like, you can just take that buyer and remove them from the list. Yeah. We just simply aren't even going to work with them because they just feel like they're playing games. And if we burn the bridges with these other buyer 2, 3, 4 that seem to be really good, it's not worth it to squeeze $2,000 out of it. They'd have to outdo it way more than that to take the risk. So it maybe worked, a couple times, but my sellers were never really too excited about that one. And it was a detriment to that buyer because they just their name got pulled off the list and weren't even considered moving forward. So, but interesting to say the least. And again, there are some buyers markets out there. There's some seller markets out there. Jason, I felt like I saw that there's a couple price ranges in our market in the Sioux Empire that were like white hot, red hot. I mean, it was just like, you put it on the market, good chance you're going to get multiple offers, closing in 30 days. And then just in this like last 3-4 weeks, things just kind of cooled off and they were in that maybe that first time home buyer move up price range in certain locations. It was kind of a surprise, to see that happening, but yeah.
All right. Should we do legal minute?
Let's do it.
This is Jeff O'Brien, attorney with Hush Blackwell with the U.S. Home Talk LegalNet. A subordination, non-disturbance, and a torment agreement is an important document in the commercial leasing relationship where the landlord has a mortgage against the leased property. This agreement, called an SNDA for short, contains three important provisions. The subordination clause provides that the tenant's leasehold interest in the property is subordinate to the lender's mortgage. The non-disturbance clause assures the tenant that its rights to their premises will be non-disturbed on specified conditions within its control, even if the landlord defaults on its loan and the lender forecloses. Finally, the attornment clause provides that the tenant will continue its obligations under the lease in the event that a new landlord takes over the contract, and may also specify that the lender or such purchaser will have certain specified rights thereafter. This is an especially important clause to a lender following a foreclosure. SNDAs, like other aspects of the commercial leasing process, require close consultation with a real estate attorney in order to have a properly drafted agreement. This is Jeff O'Brien, attorney with Hush Blackwell with the U.S. Home Talk LegalNet.
Well, I think there's great strategies out there, and it's, the longer that we're in this business, and the more business that we do, we get to see some creative things, and it's our job to take a close look at those and help our clients determine if it makes sense to move forward with it, or just simply say I'm not interested. I want something that is more of a normal offer, or here's my counter. I mean, I certainly like the idea of sellers. You get an offer with an escalation clause up to X amount. As a seller, you can simply just counter back at that number. That's the counter offer. You don't have to do anything other than, I like your offer. I'm going to counter back with this price and these terms, and would love to work with you. And so just make sure you got a great agent to guide you through the process.
Yeah,
That's the
Jason,
thing.
I think
That's the key.
It is the key. Great real estate professional, great mortgage banker, and individuals that can convey a high level of communication. I mean, if you're doing something like this, but you're able to deliver it and explain where you're coming from, and to where it's not confusing and it's very, very clear and understanding, then you can definitely get creative. But I think it's the individuals who maybe don't even quite understand it themselves, and then they're trying to do something outside the box just to be outside the box. That could be very dangerous and probably won't be very successful either. So make sure you align yourself with a local expert, and you'll be in good hands. So as our show comes to an end, we want to thank you all for taking your time to tune in live, for your support of U.S. Home Talk. As always, you guys can find us, guys and gals, you guys can find our current show and our past shows on our website, ushometalk.com, or wherever you guys find your podcasts. This is Marcus Walgrave, Jason Walgrave, Mike Overson. Have yourself a blessed week.